And hello, good people of the internet, it is I, Tommy Kelly, and this is Adventures in Woo. This episode, I want to talk a bit about music, more specifically, my music. First of all, though, I have to kind of apologise for the background sound. There's two things going on. One, my cat Riggs is very noisily eating his food just behind me, as is his wont. And outside we have an extremely windy day. We're getting the tail end of a storm. As we do here in Ireland, we get the tail ends of all the storms. Not the actual storms, but it's quite blustery and it's hitting off my shutters from outside. So apologies for that. So what I want to talk about today is just getting back into music. And I made a video last week called Reclaiming Music, which a lot of you really liked. And it resonated with a lot of you as well, which was great. In one way, great that people are kind of realising that, you know, they've let things go in the same way I have for the wrong reasons. But also sad in that so many of us have let things go that we're so passionate about or that we loved so much at some point in our life, and let go for life reasons, because life, you know, and that's a bit sad. But at least some of us are realising it and trying to get back into it. There's an interesting thing that came to me today, and I immediately messaged Spud to tell him about it. But it was that, isn't it interesting that when I decide that my patron god or my Lord and Saviour is now going to be Pan, and I have a very kind of an idea around what Pan represents me. But I just thought it was interesting that once I kind of took on board that I was going to bother Pan for a while, that I got back into music, and in such a big way, and that I realised the passion that I had lost and all of this. Being, of course, that traditionally speaking, one of Pan's roles is the god of music. So I thought that was very, very interesting and lovely. So with that in mind, what I want to show you today is some of my CDs, which of course, I mean, showing CDs here isn't great. You know, you want to hear the music. Well, maybe you don't want to hear my music. But I'm in the process, I'm going to upload this stuff, or at least get it in digital, because at the minute it's not really, any of my stuff isn't in digital format, and I'm just afraid of losing it, because I've literally only, you know, one copy of each of my albums at this thing. This is the second album I ever did, and this is called The Voice of the Silence. Is there a year on this? I don't think so. Now that's like The Voice of the Silence is there is a year, 1999. It was a whole century ago. I had just left the band that I had been in when I left school. Like, we came into, like, it was my favourite band in town, and, like, you know, it was a really kind of a cool thing for me. And it kind of ended very shitty, as bands do. But we got back together a few years later, only for it to end shitty yet again. But that's bands, like, I mean, that's the way it is. That's par for the course. That's all part of the journey. But I had done a kind of a little EP before then, and I don't have a copy of it anymore, which is probably in one way a good thing, because I have fond memories of it, and maybe it's terrible. I suspect it probably is terrible. But this is the one I did next. 10 songs on it, and Voice of Silence. I was obviously in my theosophy phase at that point, but I quite like some of the things that, and we haven't heard it in a long while, so it'll be interesting to hear how that sounds. The next one I did is Eclectic, and I don't even have the cover for this. This was a very cool cover of me in a stone circular kind of window thing with the window removed. That if you're native of Dundalk, it's the Credit Union, just off Combrassil Street. And my mum took the photo. I'm not really sure what year that's from, but I think it's about the year later. It's around 2000, 2001, something like that. And that was when I first got into computers and being able to do you know, using sequencers. I was using Cakewalk at the time, if anyone remembers that. And it was very, very limited. I couldn't record any audio on the computer because my computer just wasn't able for it. And I could barely record any MIDI. And I had to use an external MIDI player for most of the sounds. And they're quite terrible, I assume. But some of the songs might be okay. That was the kind of the start of when I did the singer-songwriter thing, where I went around the country trying to become a rock star with an acoustic guitar, singing people my songs. I had some nice gigs, I have to say. Some of them went down very well. Some of them didn't, but for the most part, it went down well. Then we have Post-Partying Blues. This is one I did in 2003, I want to say. 2001, there you go. So that one has to be 2000, 2001, because I did one every year for 4 years. I had started being a sound engineer, and I was slowly, the love of music was being dwindled from me and drained from me. And this was kind of a reaction to that. I had been in rock bands up until all of this, but none of my solo kind of bands or solo stuff is ever really, it's not really rocky or even guitar based. It's a lot more kind of piano-y, keyboardy, with some guitar stuff in it as well. But I was big into lead guitar. Like my favorite guitar players are like Nuno Bettencourt, Steve Vai, Dave Navarro, Jimmy Page. You know, all that like proper rock kind of stuff. And then the stuff that kind of came out of me wasn't that. And I think it was just a confidence thing too. But also I don't like to be kind of chained down. But if we can see this, look at that young Tommy Kelly there. Look at him. Some of the songs in that are all right. I'm looking forward to hearing them. I did do a remake, not a remix, a remaster of them a number of years ago. A couple of the songs were okay. After that, I did the EP many years later. It's like 2012, I think. That is with the Corona bundle, which I really like. And I was listening to, obviously, an awful lot of LCD Sound System at the time, but there is still some guitars in that as well. So the other kind of big band that I was in was a band called Wendy Miller, and when I was in school, I used to sit beside a guy called Ed, who was big into guitar, and he was the first guy who kind of introduced me to Aleister Crowley as well. Even though he didn't know an awful lot about him, he had a connection from Crowley from Jimmy Page. But he was in a band called Wicker Man, and they were like the big band of the town, and I was a fan, and I was going, I'd love to be in a band like that. So he left the band, and then he suggested that I should join the band. And so I kind of joined the band, and it was great. So I spent a number of years. The first time, I think it was about 2 years I spent in the band. And did we record anything now? We did a demo, I think. We were beginning to record an album, and then it all just fell apart because of egos and youth. And the other two guys who were in the band was three-piece. They were a lot older than me, which it seems less of now, but like I think 6 or 7 years or something. But when I was like 18, 19 and they were 26, 27, there's a huge gap of, experience and all of that kind of stuff. And it was my first kind of introduction to, I just left my home. My parents had just split up. It was all a very kind of dark period of my life. There may have been a few drugs, who knows, those days or what they are. And it all felt a wee bit kind of lost, whatever. And it did for a number of years after that, even after that band kind of fell apart and I was doing the solo stuff. Those were kind of the lost years, very lonely years, I have to say, very dark. But we did do a number of things. We got back together a number of years later and we did a number of things. This is the album that we spent all the money on, like as $5 or $6 grand, which was huge money back in the day for us. And it's terrible. It's not... doesn't sound like us. The production's terrible on it. It's just not good. And with the guy Alan, who's the singer, he was the main songwriter. And there's some great songs. He really is a top class songwriter. And I didn't do justice, I don't think, to some of those songs. I wanted to produce it, but I got outvoted in that. But I did produce this one, which I did on 8-track, and it got mixed kind of in a studio. In the studio that was recorded, but that got like single of the week in Hot Press, which is the big magazine here in Ireland, and I really like that, or at least I did back in the day. I was quite happy with the sound, and I think that's probably the most indicative, or it's the most what Wendy Miller sounded like. To wear Wicker Man had to change the name because there was another band called Wicker Man, so by the time I joined, they were Wendy Miller. They wanted to keep the symbol, the logo, the WM. We had Smiles Narcotics single, and then the songbook. There is other stuff. We did live videos and stuff like that, but they're all in like really small resolution because it's like 15 years ago when we were doing this, and this was before YouTube, it was before anything. I was one of the first people in town who actually had my demo tape on a CD. And Wendy Miller, I think, was actually one of the very first, and it would cost like 30 quid a CD or something to get them printed at that time. But happy days, wonderful times, and I'm going to try and digitally preserve these or archive these. I doubt I'll be able to put up any of the Wendy Miller stuff, at least not much of it, because as I say, it kind of fell apart, and I haven't spoken to Chris or Jerry in a number of years, and I certainly haven't spoken to Alan in well over a decade, possibly 15 years. So I think it's unfair, and I think put up stuff that in someone else's art that you are involved in, obviously, but it's who am I to put it up? Maybe they don't want it heard, maybe they do, maybe they're using it in some other different form, it doesn't matter. But I might put up 1 or 2 songs just for the hell of it, if they're good. It'll be hard to know, but the other ones I will put up on the website at some stage, just as a more kind of archive type of deal. So yeah, that's it. No intention of recording a new album as yet, but I would love to get a kind of a bit of a jam going, maybe with some people in the area whenever this lockdown opens. And I may or may not have bought a new guitar, so there may be a video about that soon. So yeah, that's a kind of a very short overview of my music career. Not really to go into too much detail, but yeah, spent the main band I was in was Wendy Miller. We did a number of things. There's 2 eras. There's the very young when I was 18, 19, and then we started again. I think 20. I was 24, 25 for another five years or so, maybe. But more, and then in between all of that, I was doing solo albums, and I have 4, 5, 6, something like that. So yeah, and in the last 10 years, I've done nothing. Well, what year is 2020? 8 years since I did anything, and I didn't play guitar for about 4 years up until about 2 weeks ago, when Pan decided that now is the time for music to return to my life. So, good people of the internet, I hope you have a more interesting CD collection of your own music than mine, and or whatever it is that is the equivalent of your art, and that if you are getting back into a passion that you had from years ago, so please share it with me and let me know what's going on or what you're hoping to do. Or even if you haven't had a passion from years ago and you're sort of discovering a new one, please share that with me too, because I love hearing about that sort of stuff from people. May your best art be ahead, and be well.